Sport requires effort, sweat and strong will, and Macron knows it. A leading global company with Italian DNA in the production and sale of sportswear, when Macron first entered the sports world in 1971, it was a small yet strong player. Since then, Macron has been growing at a very fast pace, supporting teams, sportsmen and women at all levels, working hard to supply them with the best technical products to help improve their performances. With over 4 million pieces of stock available in our Italian warehouse and an extensive range of on-field, off-field and free-time products, we cater for everyone from amateurs to professional sporting organisations, even referees. Ranked third most prominent football brand by the UEFA, Macron keeps expanding its presence worldwide, including Australia, where we are currently proud partners of Perth Glory, Macarthur FC, Port Adelaide and Parramatta Eels, and more to come. Work hard, play harder, Macron, your next teamwear partner. For more information, visit our website at www.macronvic.com.au or call us on 1800 Macron.
Looking for the best in authentic Maltese cuisine? Then you need to dine at Georgie's on Vista. Situated in the heart of Fraser Eyes, you can't go wrong when it comes to family dining. We have a menu for mum and dad, one for the kids, and one for seniors. Everyone's taken care of. Don't miss our specialty nights. Tuesday night is Parma night, where you get to choose from not one, but 5 different Parmas. Wednesday night, kids eat free with every paying adult meal. Thursday night is Members Night, where members get the chance to win some great prizes. And Friday night, join us for happy hour between 5:30pm to 7:30pm. Jim, Johnny, Jack and their little brother Schooner are only $5 each. Looking to get an early start Friday afternoon for a punt? Our sports bar with TAB is open from 3pm Friday afternoons. To book your table, email info@georgiesonvista.com.au. Bring the family and come dine at Georgie's on Vista, 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Eyes, Plumpton.
Well, it's that time of the week again, ladies and gentlemen. It's Football Out West showtime, and a very, very warm welcome to you wherever you may be. Man, it is going to be a massive show tonight. My name is Tonchi Prusak. I'm one of 3 co-hosts, and without further ado, let's bring one of those guys in straight away. It is indeed Craig Filer. Craig, a very, very warm welcome to you. To the microphone. We have got a massive, massive show tonight. But first of all, last week's show, geez, it's caused a lot of action, shall we say?
Good evening, listeners. Good evening, Tonch. Yes, it has, mate. We had a right old ding dong last week, didn't we? With Kimon, who came on and told us a few things about the cancellation of the league, and obviously that went down like a lead balloon. So a lot of unhappy listeners and supporters and club personnel, and that's all been blown up this week, I think. So yeah,
I'll tell you what though, it attracted a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners. One of our best rating episodes all year. So it would certainly.
Hey, well, that tells you a story, mate. Is we can't be fluffy anymore. We got to be controversial.
But I tell you what, tonight is going to be even bigger, and he's a permanent member of the show. We might as well say a good evening to Steve Curtin. Steve, how are you, mate? A massive show lined up tonight. What are just some of the things that we can look forward to over the next hour and a half? Because we will not go under an hour and a half tonight.
Yeah, that's right. Lots to look forward to, and I think we're going to. First of all, I think we might be a chance to outrate the finale of Survivor tonight. There's going to be a lot of people tuning in, so it's pretty exciting stuff. But yeah, we've got some very big guests. The chair of the AAFC to talk about the National Second Division, which is one of the most exciting topics that's getting people talking in the footballing. The footballing nation that is Australia. Nick Galatas, he'll be joining us to chat about that and tell us what's in store, what might be happening. Also, a couple of late call-ups, Mark Sultana, president, of course, of the Caroline Springs George Cross. And we've also got former Preston president ZAK GRUEVSKI joining us as well, I believe, as well as our man from Moscow to talk about Serie A, Dan Pagnocolo, who's going to be joining us a little later on as well. So can't wait to get through all of our guests, if we can get through all of them.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Craig, there's a very good reason why we've got Mark on again, who is also the sponsor, the president of our major season sponsor, Caroline Springs George Cross Football Club. Big shout out to everyone at the Georgies, as well as our episode sponsor, Macron Victoria. But back to our guest, there's a really good reason why Mark and Zach are coming on. We'll talk about that more extensively, but give the viewers a little bit of a taste test of what they can expect in about 10 minutes' time.
Yeah, well, off the back of last week's show, Tonch, obviously, as I said earlier on, it's created a bit of a talking point through Victoria with football clubs, and a number of clubs have shown their dissatisfaction, I suppose, with the decision.
That's a good way to describe it.
So they've got together as a number of clubs, and Zach and Mark will talk more about that when they come on shortly. But I understand there was a meeting with clubs this afternoon where some discussions took place, and we'll find we're very lucky. We've got a bit of a head start on anybody on this, so it's a bit of a breaking news. So they'll be on very, very shortly to tell us exactly what that meeting involved and what the processes are, if any, going forward.
Big stuff happening tonight, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away. We're going to start it off with the news desk. We're not even going to do an intro. We're just going to go straight to the news desk. And Steve, you've got that all down pat. Take it away, mate.
All right. Well, shall we start with some overnight scores? Does that sound like what the doctor ordered before we get into the heavy stuff? Start with a bit of EPL, perhaps the early game last night. Bit of a surprise result as Tottenham Hotspur without Son ended with 10 men after Tanganga got sent off for 2 yellow cards, and Crystal Palace getting a 3-0 win there. Great result. And that on your screen there, that's the upcoming fixtures, I think, there at the moment, which we'll get to in a second. Crystal Palace, 3-0. Edouard scoring on debut off the bench. Wolves got their first goals of the season and their first win, 2-0 over Watford. Brighton got a win away at Brentford, while Arsenal got their first win of the season, beating Norwich 1-0 with a goal that had to be reviewed by VAR, but eventually got over the line. Headline grabber, of course, Ronaldo scoring a double for Man United at Old Trafford against Newcastle. Antonio sent off for West Ham as they were held 0-0 down at St Mary's Stadium against Southampton. Man City got the win courtesy of a Bernardo Silva goal against Leicester, and Chelsea 3-0 over Aston Villa, a Lukaku double in that one. Couple of games to come tonight. Later on, 1:30 a.m. for all you night owls out there. Should be a good one. Leeds United hosting Liverpool. And for early risers, Everton, Burnley. That one kicks off at 5 a.m. Did you guys catch any EPL games overnight?
No, I didn't, but I'm looking for. I did see a few of the highlights of. You can not watch some of the highlights that of for example, Manchester United, the immortal Cristiano Ronaldo getting that double against Newcastle. That I'll be looking forward to the Leeds United Liverpool clash in the wee hours of tomorrow morning. That should be fun. But I didn't get a chance to see that. Did you, Steve? Did you watch any of the games?
I sat up and watched the Leicester Man City game. That was the only one that I got to see. And really entertaining match, actually, with the crowd at full voice at the King Power. It was good. It was a good match, end-to-end action. There's a table there. Yeah. There's the table. Man United and Chelsea both on 10 points. Man City on 9, along with Brighton, who's had a good start to the season. Tottenham with their first loss of the season, dropped the points. They stay on 9, and West Ham picked up the 1 point there on 8. Liverpool, of course, with a game in hand, as well as their city rivals, Everton, in 7th and 8th.
Well, I tell you what, I know it's early days yet, and it's very congested up there. But that was a big loss for Tottenham. Going down to Aston Villa, so they've slipped five
to
spots.
Palace. Yep.
5 spots. To Palace. Sorry, 5
Yep.
spots. So that was quite an event there. If we look at the bottom end of the ladder as well, a few clubs that we kind of expected to be down the bottom. Arsenal. Conspicuous by their absence from the relegation zone, for the moment.
I think Arteta would be pretty relieved to have got his first points of the season. If he didn't get that win against Norwich, it would have been real trouble for his position, but he survives for the time being, so hopefully he can keep going for his sake.
Yeah.
Not looking so good for Norwich at the moment. Newcastle and Burnley struggling to pick up some points, but both those sides in 18th and 19th have played some okay football, and they can turn things around pretty quickly, I'm sure, if they can get on a roll. Games next week, there they are on the screen. What's the pick of them there? Let me see. Tottenham-Chelsea, that should be a good one. That's the last game of the round on Monday at 1:30. West Ham, Man United, that might be a decent watch too at a good time next weekend at 11 p.m. on Sunday. Might tune in.
I am liking those nice early times, especially on a Saturday night. Some of those nice games, 9:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. Even the 1 o'clock isn't too bad, I suppose. But I'm not sure how that's going to change once daylight savings kicks in.
Yeah, we'll make the most of it while daylight savings before it kicks in, because then it becomes more stacked towards getting up early rather than staying up late.
Yeah. All right, let's move along now to the mainland, so to speak, and we'll go straight away to Germany first of all, the Bundesliga. And there's the table. What are some of the results that are happening in the Bundesliga?
Yeah, a couple of high-scoring games, as we often get. Bayer Leverkusen ended up going down 3-4 as they hosted Dortmund. And it was a fairly contentious penalty that they got for the winning goal, which was scored by Haaland, who managed to score a double himself there. So they took the lead, I think, 3 times there, Leverkusen, but couldn't get the job done, ended up getting no points at all. So another good win for Dortmund. And Bayern Munich thought they might have been a little bit tested by RB Leipzig, but a 4-1 win, so a pretty resounding one there. Union Berlin and Augsburg, they drew 0-0 just to average out, bring down the average goals for the round. And some other ones, Wolfsburg, they're going along great. They had a 2-0 win at Fürth. And the other result there was an interesting game. Freiburg and FC Köln 1-1, as well as Mainz getting a 2-0 win over Hoffenheim. So there's the table there. Wolfsburg just taking the plaudits at the moment ahead of Bayern and Dortmund, who are hot on their heels.
It's great to see someone other than Bayern on top. But
for how long, I wonder.
Yeah, for how long? They're continuously hovering.
It is
up
good to see.
Yeah, it does make the competition that little bit more interesting. But look, with a lot of these competitions, you sort of see it after Christmas time when the depth does get challenged. That's when it separates the men from the boys. But an interesting league there in the at the moment happening in the German Bundesliga. Moving over to Ligue 1 or whatever it's called, the French league.
It's the Uber Eats League, as it's called now, which is the naming rights sponsor.
Is that right?
It is.
This is anything but an interesting kind of a competition. Although Angers and Marseille both in second and third position at the moment, or equal second if you like. They do have a game in hand, but look at that. Already the almighty PSG have opened up a commanding lead at the top of the competition standings, and we've only gone 5 rounds in. So, Steve, what were some of the results on match day 5?
Yeah, well, the big one, PSG played at home against Clermont, and they had a 4-0 win there. Mbappe on the score sheet in that one. No Lionel Messi, and Ander Herrera scored a double in that one for PSG. So Clermont suffered their first defeat of the season. They've been doing very well since they've been promoted. They go down 4-0. Other results, Lorient over Lille 2-1, and Marseille went to Monaco and got a 2-0 win. And if you're a Ligue 1 fan, you can watch games from 9 o'clock tonight, straight after our show, Montpellier and Saint Etienne. And then that team you mentioned that's currently in second, Angers, they're playing Brest at 11 p.m. our time. So, yeah, good time slots again, as well as Bordeaux Lens. So some good, good matches at 11 p.m.
Judging by that pronunciation, Steve, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Did you do French at school?
Oh, I did Indonesian, mate, actually. We got learned the language of the near neighbour, Bahasa Indonesia. But no, I'm pretty ordinary at my French, to be fair.
What about you, Craig? Did you end up doing any French at school back in Wales?
Can't speak English, mate, let alone French.
Yeah, Welsh is a bit of a different language, isn't it? Gents, moving along now to La Liga.
Spain now.
The last but not least of the Big Five competitions. There we go. Look, Real Madrid obviously has got a game in hand. Barcelona game in hand. But very close, Sevilla as well, Valencia. So this one's quite a tight competition. Look how many teams, no less than 6 teams on 7 points and they've all got games in hand at the moment, or bar Mallorca. But
yeah, that's right. Just 2 games. Well, there was just 2 games overnight in La Liga. So the top of the table side, the Athletic Bilbao getting a 2-0 home win over Mallorca, and the other match was Levante 1, Rayo Vallecano, which is a great name as well. That was 1-1 there. So there's a whole bunch of games to come tonight with Espanyol and Atletico Madrid at 10 o'clock. So I think Atletico Madrid might fancy their chances to get the win on the road there. No Barcelona in action this weekend. I'm not too sure why. Real Madrid, they're playing Celta Vigo at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning is the other big match to come in Spain.
You expect those the Madrid clubs to do well in both those fixtures. But that's it pretty much for the overseas overnight wrap. As you can see, the Spanish league, and it's good to see everyone was sort of talking that might be, what's the word? Probably not an interesting competition, but in the off season. But it's good to see that it actually has got a little bit of excitement. But the French league, well, I think there's not much interest in the French league, I'd say. Was there any interest?
I think the biggest interest was that match where they started throwing bottles on the field at Nice the other week. So and they called it off early. That was a bit of a flashpoint.
Yeah.
Monaco,
yeah. Now, gents, what we might actually do is how are we going for time? We're ticking along really, really well, but we might just take a little bit of a break now. It is episode 73 of the Football Out West show. Big news, folks. Tomorrow, the Geelong Region Soccer Show is back. We're back for another month or so at least. We're determined we're going to finish the year off in style. We've got some great guests tomorrow. The outgoing president of Armstrong United, Mick Parker, as well as also the outgoing coach of the Galaxy United Football Club, Rob Casher. They'll be joining us tomorrow at 7 p.m. So make sure to join us for that. But don't go away. Big shout out once again to our sponsors without whom we would not be able to see out this year and certainly would not be able to bring this show to you. The Caroline Springs George Cross Football Club. They are our major season sponsor this year. And indeed, our episode sponsor, Macron Victoria. Here's a couple of words from Macron Victoria. And then after the break, we've got our first guest, the chairman of the Australian Association of Football Clubs, or Association of Australian Football Clubs, Nick Galatas. Don't go away, folks.
Sport requires effort, sweat and strong will, and Macron knows it. A leading global company with Italian DNA in the production and sale of sportswear. When Macron first entered the sports world in 1971, it was a small yet strong player. Since then, Macron has been growing at a very fast pace, supporting teams, sportsmen and women at all levels, working hard to supply them with the best technical products to help improve their performances. With over 4 million pieces of stock available in our Italian warehouse and an extensive range of on-field, off-field and free-time products, we cater for everyone from amateurs to professional sporting organisations, even referees. Ranked 3rd most prominent football brand by the UEFA, Macron keeps expanding its presence worldwide, including Australia, where we are currently proud partners of Perth Glory, Macarthur FC, Port Adelaide and Parramatta Eels, and more to come. Work hard, play harder, Macron, your next teamwear partner. For more information, visit our website at www.macronvic.com.au or call us on 1800-MACRON. 1800-MACRON.
Welcome back to the Football Out West show. Now, gents, I made a little bit of a boo-boo, didn't I? It is Nick Galatas is joining us, but he's in the green room at the moment. He'll be joining us a little bit later on. Up next, we've got first of all, we've got the president of the Caroline Springs George Cross Football Club. He'll be joining us first. Mark Sultana and Craig, have we got Mark on the phone?
Yeah, hopefully we've got him there. He's been sat in the background. Nice
I
and
can hear you all.
Yeah, he's been sat in the background.
Very good.
It's not normal, is it? But he's here, and he's gonna have a few words. I suppose on the I say fallout. It's not really a fallout. The discussions from last weekend. Good evening, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Very well.
Evening, Mark.
Good. Punchy, Steve, how are you?
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
Mark, now over to you, mate. After last week's appearance by Football Victoria President Kimon Taliadoros, so we have to really be thankful to Kimon for taking out the time. There has been a fair bit of let's just call it. There's been a fair bit of stuff happening behind the scenes this week. Bring us up to date with what's going on.
Oh, look, again, thank you to Kimon too, because he has also responded to us, which is great. But look, again, we're just forming an idea of getting a few clubs together and just questioning the merit of the decision. Really, I mean, I don't think it's how can I say it? Probably a wrong decision. There's been other leagues that have come out and still honoured promotion relegation, and again, it's about rewarding. And if you're going to reward the those that would have been relegated, well, then you need to reward those that should have been promoted. So we'll have a look at it. And again, Zak's done an amazing job and just put a few things together. And it's a way of introducing Zak to obviously make part of this conversation with everybody. I mean, it is the football world that we reach out to and doing the right thing on behalf of many other clubs. So, that's really where we're at. Again, Football Victoria in a place where they'll understand our process, and we'll see how we land, and hopefully we can talk about, what a great outcome it's been for all parties involved. So I think it's important that Zak then sort of kicks in and explains that, because I'm sure there's many questions. But as clubs, we feel that there's some decision-making that needs to be either reversed or engineered. But, we'll go from there.
Now, you've mentioned Zak, and the person in question there is former Preston Lions president ZAK GRUEVSKI, who is basically chairing an informal group of organisations or clubs called the United Football Group of Clubs. Now, we have, Craig, I believe, got Zak on the line as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't have technological issues, we're going to have Mark Sultana, we're going to have ZAK GRUEVSKI, and us three here in our respective studios. Zak, are you on the line?
I certainly am, Ponchy. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come on tonight. And good evening to all of Ponch, Craig, and Evan, as well as Mark. Thank you.
Now,
Good
Zak,
evening.
thanks
for coming on. Really appreciate you giving up your time to come on a Sunday evening. And you don't know how many fingers and toes I had crossed under the desk here waiting to get this, because we've had some technical issues over the past, and thank God we've got all of us on tonight. So thanks again for jumping on. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you again. You've done really well with the technological issues, mate. We're loud and clear.
He's done well. He's done well, but don't give him any compliments. Every time we give him compliments, that's when things really start to stuff up. Zak,
this is a first though, with two callers on the line at once.
Yeah, absolutely. I got everything crossed, fingers crossed, everything, shoelaces. Now, Zak, before we do get onto the meeting and what eventuated today, mate, you've stepped down for your own personal reasons as president of Preston Lions. A lot happening at Preston. It's a club that's very ambitious and that really wants to take this sport in a whole new direction, just like our sponsors, Caroline Springs, George Cross, just like many other clubs around the state. Tell us just some of the exciting things, just for the sake of Preston fans, some of the exciting things that are happening in the background up at BT Connor Reserve.
Thanks, Ponchy. Look, yes, spot on. I did step down from that role after almost 8 years, and I say step down, personal. It's probably more professional reasons than personal reasons. It's very difficult to run two jobs, as most of you, I'm sure, would appreciate. My colleague Mark, I know, understands the feeling given he's trying to run a terrific club. So you're spot on. A lot of synergies with many ambitious clubs, Preston, George Cross, among many others, who really are taking a stance and trying to improve the level of professionalism within our clubs. We've had a fantastic journey over a number of years, and more recently, clearly, both on and off the field, have made some really positive strides to get the club back to where all of us many years ago remember the strength of a Preston Lions football club, or Preston Macedonia Soccer Club, as it might have been called many years ago. Look, a lot of terrific things happening in the background, and we've been pretty open about those things and pretty transparent and wanting to share the terrific news that many people have contributed to. Just a significant improvement in facilities. I mean, people would have seen, who are pretty active on social media, the level of interest that's been garnered and the support we've received as a club this year has been absolutely phenomenal. So huge shout out to our sponsors as a club. I'm sounding like a president again. To our sponsors, clearly, and to our supporters and members who've just been by the club side through thick and thin over many years, and now can finally see the fruits of all of that labour. If you're getting crowds of, clearly pre-COVID, or pre that last lockdown, if you're getting crowds of sort of $3,500 dollars, if it was only $3,500, it'd be cheap. 3,500 people at a game, it's astronomical, and it's testament to the good work that the club's obviously put in over many years. And it's really about delivering a product for people to come along on a Friday night to a fantastic facility, to have some kawapi rolls and something to drink. People are after some entertainment. I mean, the football is an important aspect of it, but we all know, gents, the social aspect of it is equally important. And I think as a club, that's what we've been able to zone in on and have people believe that there is hope for our club again.
No, it's brilliant. There's certainly been a lot of people who probably weren't Preston fans, but certainly a lot of people that are tuning in to see what Preston have done. Certainly in last season, and will continue to do so as they start to rise up the leagues, I suppose. So just off of that now, in your time at Preston, want to really touch on obviously the United football groups of clubs, and we understand that today there was a Zoom call with a number of clubs. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, Zach? How it came about? And sort of some of the things that perhaps were spoken about. You haven't got to obviously go into too much detail, but just give our listeners and the football public an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah,
sure. Thanks, Craig. I mean, look, very happy to share some of that. But we had a wonderful response on the back of obviously the decision that FA made. I mean, we've all formed great friendships and relationships with others at clubs. And Mark, obviously Sultana, myself and a few others, Peter from Brunswick City, Lou from Pascaval, and David Swiatkowski from Preston Lions. We got together and had a bit of a chat about the dissatisfaction of parts of the decision that have been made, and really just to toss around some ideas as to how we can. And we obviously heard Kimon last week on the show. Kimon's obviously in a very difficult spot. We acknowledge that, but so too we are as clubs. We're in an extremely difficult spot when we've been down a particular path with the start of this season being extremely clear to us, all of us as clubs, and all of us have invested in a range of aspects of our clubs on the understanding or on the premise that promotion relegation was a live issue this season, and sadly we find ourselves in this position now where we're having to form some informal, whether you call them informal groups or not. The level of interest within the space of 2 days has actually been phenomenal from a range of clubs. We put out just an email to clubs who, in the initial phase, was really about getting clubs together who have been impacted from let's call it a promotion aspect, both on the men's and on the women's side of football within Victoria. We had over 40 clubs respond to that, as I said, within 2 days. And for us, that was superb. We had over 30 clubs join the call today. Obviously, were apologies, but what that clearly demonstrates to us is a clear interest from clubs, a clear dissatisfaction with elements of the decision making, a clear undertaking to try and pursue this with the federation. And myself, we have engaged some legal support to try and help us understand and navigate through the various processes. Better understanding the rules of competition, a host of other things that go with that, and to put a position and have a conversation with the federation, both with CEO Kimon and also with the board, to share our position. And again, from a conversation, and Kimon's been very giving of his time in recent days. From a conversation we had earlier this week, it was clear that yes, there are some challenges around some of this, and there is some empathy around the challenges clubs face. But that said, that's not going to reverse the decision right now. And clearly, the clubs that are aggrieved are predominantly, and on today's call, predominantly speaking about the promotion relegation issue. There's been plenty of other federations who have explored this both in other codes, but also we know, and I know you guys published this on your sites earlier this week, Capital Football, for example, were able to go down a path and find a solution for clubs to say there is promotion relegation through consultation. Now, FB's done a lot of consultation in the last couple of weeks. Now, so many clubs, it sounds like some of that consultation hasn't been heard, and clubs really are voicing their opinions now because maybe they haven't been heard as much as they would have liked. So that's in a nutshell some of the conversation that occurred today. It's crystal clear that clubs would like us to pursue this with the federation, and then reserve our right to any other action that we may choose as a group of clubs, because there are a lot of disgruntled clubs out there.
And Zach, just out of curiosity as well, have you been able to get the support of some of the clubs who themselves weren't in line for promotion that still back you guys to be going ahead and pushing this action to happen?
Yeah, look, Stephen, informally we have. Again, the initial phase was really to reach out to those clubs who are directly impacted by the promotion relegation decision, more so clearly on the promotion front, those that were in the mix for promotion at the time the season was called off. But I know informally I had calls probably as late as 10:30 last night from clubs who are saying they're extremely supportive of what we're trying to do. They understand and appreciate that maybe it's not this phase that they want to join us, but they're very comfortable to come and join us for this ride down the track when another opportunity comes about. And we'd be very happy as clubs to open that further up to clubs and hear their views, albeit they may not be in the mix this year for promotion. This may happen again down the track, God forbid.
Now, there's a question here, or a comment here on the screen from Paul Lavarakis, I think. Unfortunately, with no direction from the state government as to when sport can recommence, I'd say the season is over. We could be in lockdown for months potentially, but that's not the issue, is it? It's not the fact that the season's finished.
No.
We all understand that the season's finished and it's not coming back. The situation is that the Football Federation now have cancelled the season and not rewarding the clubs that have put in the effort over the past 2 years to put themselves in a position to go for promotion. Instead, what that now does is has an adverse effect where you've got clubs that have been bottom of the league in various leagues for the last 2 years and still not relegated. That's unfair and reasonable. So that's the reason why you guys have got together with this football group. Would I be correct, Zach?
Yeah, look, absolutely spot on. And if I reiterate Mark's comments earlier tonight, Mark was very, very clear. We're rewarding clubs who potentially should be relegated. Now, again, our focus today was on discussing this with clubs who have a lot to play for. As I said earlier, have gone down a particular path to invest in their clubs and their infrastructure and everything else that goes with that, and put in all the hard yards, only to be
We talked
Now
about
that hurt.
Hello,
And,
sorry, Zach, you just broke up for a second there.
My apologies. Sorry, the beauty of mobile phone technology.
Yeah.
What I was saying is really it's hurting clubs who after 2 years they've got nothing to show for this. And without getting too emotional and carried away with this sort of stuff, we as a group of clubs want to present a position to the federation because we believe genuinely there are a range of options we can actually explore here. Now, whether that be straight promotion, whether we say, well, look, guys, you've got to reconsider your decision and just promote the first 2 clubs or the first 4, as might have been the case in NPL 3, depending on whatever the structures were. They could go down a path of restructuring or re-engineering to use Kimon's point and achieve the same outcome. None of us are silly to understand that, not to understand, I should say, that COVID is a real issue here for us. And will we ever get the opportunity between now and the end of the year to potentially play some additional games? I mean, one of the things that Federation has been very clear on in the last 12 months, they've said, we want to maintain integrity of competition. And we're all supportive of that. We get that. However, they also said that, and this was part of their guiding principles last year, and they've supported that this year, they were clear and articulate about this strategy to say, as a minimum, clubs need to play each other once. Okay, well, that's fine. If that's an option on the table, that would generally mean that in most of their competitions, clubs would potentially need to play a maximum of 2 to 3 games. Some clubs have only played 13 games. That's in the men's competition, and obviously on the women's side, they've played a couple of games less. And they've made it clear in their recent roadmap that was only released, as I said, about 3 weeks ago, where they spoke to us as clubs and said, look, this is what we're looking at. And they reiterated their points about rounds 10 and 11 being played immediately as soon as competition was available to be played. Subject to government regulations and guidelines, clearly. Now, why would the Federation do that if they weren't serious about this position and the importance of that integrity? We're happy to support that. We're happy to support the Federation. We're not trying to railroad the Federation. We're trying to work with them to find a sensible and rational solution. And I said this to Kimon the other day. Without bloodletting, for too long we've gone down the path and thrown stones at each other. We're part of a football family. And what we want to do is work with our governing body. We've got, as I said, 40 clubs within the space of 2 days have registered for a forum because they want a voice. And they feel they haven't been heard through whatever supposed consultation happens in the last month or so.
Tonch.
Now we've got our hands, Zach. We've got our hands on the document that was handed out. I think this is early August, and it basically,
I think it was, Tonch.
Well, 8th of August. Yeah. Now it actually suggested that in season 2022 there'd be a restructuring of the competition. So we're looking at NPL at the moment, saying that there would be an increase in the number of teams both in NPL 2, and that there would be there'll be promotion up from NPL. There'll be no teams relegated. Is that right? So basically, in effect, it said the season would be extended that little bit longer. So instead of, was there any talk with Kimon, or has there been any talk with the Federation over the last, let's say, week or so about continuing that whole idea of getting teams to move up without the relegation, or in NPL 2, NPL 3, etc. So in other words, to stick to that, what I won't say original agreement, but that original vision of next year there being more team, an expanded team in the NPL competitions, which would obviously have a flow-on effect to the divisions below it.
Yeah. Look, there's been I'll say limited conversation on that, and we all know, we heard Kimon allude to some form of restructure or engineering last week on this program. It is very clear. There's been a mandate that Football Victoria has sought to follow in the last 12, 18 months. So this is no secret to any of us. And we've all been supportive of this program of work. And if you look at those of us who read and look at some of these important documents for the future of our game, you look at the performance gap material that and the guiding principles that Football Australia put out, not that long ago. that talks about a 16-team competition in NPL 1. It's very clear. And the premise and the purpose of all of that is really to give kids an opportunity. So we're talking about 30 games a season. We're talking about giving kids opportunities to play football, which currently is not occurring enough. And, I'm not the one putting that information out. It's our governing bodies, Football Australia, put that in place. So naturally, then when you cascade that downwards into the various divisions, you're going to have, as a minimum of 14 clubs in NPL 2, for example, 16 in NPL 1, so on and so forth, and 14 in NPL 3. And then that would flow down into the various aspects. Not too dissimilar for the women's competition. There's been something on the table, documented. This is not me dreaming things up or any of the clubs dreaming things up. Oh, we thought they said this. No. This is clear and documented information that they've shared with us with a pathway to improve our football in this state. And on the women's side, we've been clear. How do you operate? We're on the verge of having a World Cup in this country in 2023. Yeah. We've got 8 teams in our top tier of women's football in this state. Now, how do you not laugh at that?
Yeah.
And it was clear there needed to be 10 teams in 2022 as a minimum. The clubs already could be 12 teams. Again, that's for the federation to determine. But what this decision does, it really puts on hold for another year. So we wasted 2 years of football, and here we are, keep talking about improving the quality of football in this country.
Yeah. So just one last one for me, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But if there was a restructuring of the leagues, would the let's use Carolyn George Cross as an example here, who've at this stage have won the league in State League 1, would you forgive that winning of the title for a restructuring of the league?
Oh, look, I can answer that. I mean, part of the conversation is clubs want to be recognised as champions as well. So there's a little bit of clarity around that we need to, discuss as a group. I mean, this is not a witch hunt for anybody. This is just to make sure that we're clear on understanding that some clubs will want to be recognised as champions and some clubs would, want to exercise their right to be promoted. I mean, Zach's made it very clear that there's, again, the comps from the FFV have been very clear. And we just want to exercise our right for our brand of our club to, again, whether it's be nominated as champions or at least be promoted and recognised for the right of an ambitious football club that wants to, strive to be the best. So, I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, there's 40 clubs now and it could be 100 clubs in 2 weeks, but this is for everyone. This is just so that everyone's got a voice and they can understand that they can speak out so that we can actually, help and support Football Victoria. Zach's done an amazing job, being very clear. Again, and I say that again, it's not a witch hunt, and he's made that very clear as well. But you know what? If there's championship on the table, and you ask me, do I want it? Of course, I would love to be recognised as a champion football club because that's what we strive for that word, champion. So, it can become emotional for a lot of people. For a club like ours that's been wishing for a long time to be able to be classed as champions, it's a huge desire. That's why we're ambitious, and that's why we do what we do, and we try and get clarity around what we want as football clubs. Anyway, I think you get, a full picture of where we're at. I think it's important through forums like yourselves, I'll say that again, that we give our clubs the opportunity to speak and to be broadcasted. So I'd say a huge thank you for that. And we'll have a great interview with Nick. He's doing a great job on the NFC. So all good. And hello to all my members and all that, and everyone's and Preston's members and everybody that's involved here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Mark, Zach, it's a massive topic, and this is hot off the press. So obviously there's going to be a lot of details still to be ironed out. There's still obviously more consultation with the powers that be at Football Victoria to come. So obviously at the moment, everything is very, very general and it's in its embryonic stage of negotiation. So obviously, there's people asking, the finer details about what happens if the third place team that's got a game in hand and this and that, whatever. I understand that. But at the moment, I think that the bigger picture or the more general picture is whether Football Victoria is willing to now listen to the clubs or not. Or whether the competition will be restructured. Gents, can I ask if a massive favour? Would you two be willing to come back on the show next week and we can talk a little bit more about it, and also probably have more up-to-date news and details with this issue, which is certainly not going to go away?
I'd be extremely happy. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, but 100%. We're more than happy to keep people in the loop on what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, as you rightly said, Tonchi, this happened this afternoon, late afternoon. We spent over an hour and a half with clubs. And a lot of the feedback we're getting from them is, how often do we get this opportunity to be genuinely heard? Mm-hmm. And that's not me making up those comments. That's people posting comments and sharing their thoughts and their frustrations. Yeah. And that's what we're about.
Yeah, and listen,
and as a group, I mean, David, who's the Preston president, put through a forum today that had questions and answers that were required from us to answer as clubs. So again, it just goes to show the ownership. And again, it's that word there. It's about being recognised for our clubs. And I think that's where the whole forum is about, really understanding what our football clubs mean, okay, on the impact this decision has had. So again, David, the group's together about, again, answering questions that are pertinent to us. Promotion, relegation, or a restructure that understands that we can actually, suffice to say, incorporate the teams that are sitting third and fourth to really understand that. So that's in the hands of Football Victoria. We have a number of options that we're going to put on the table, and part and parcel that makes up part of the option. So that gives you an answer in regards to the third and the fourth position.
Yeah, and lastly, very lastly from me, you've mentioned it when you've come on the show many times, Mark. This is a show for everybody. This is a show for any footballing public that got an interest in the world game to come on and have a say. Don't be keyboard warriors. Pick up the bloody phone, speak, and come on. That's what it's about. It's a show that we can get everybody united, not just George Cross, not just Preston Lions, who we're thankful for ZAK for coming on as a part of the Preston Lions, but the show's for everybody, guys. Get involved with us. Whatever your thoughts, whatever you're thinking, get on, make yourself heard, and that's the only way we're going to develop this game of football in Australia.
Absolutely, absolutely correct, gents. There's someone, Ivan Stragan, said in the comments section. I'll bring this up. Ange put it perfectly. Something along the lines of, "Everybody loves to talk, but nobody wants to take action." Well, 30 clubs from Victoria have certainly taken action, and boy, have they taken action. And thank you to both of you for coming on to represent those clubs, the United Football Clubs of Victoria. Very loose organisation, but it's a loose organisation with a very, very strong voice. So, gentlemen, thank you both for coming on board. It is causing waves. Like, this is already, the numbers are massive. It's probably our most viewed episode this year, and last week's episode Gents had something like over 6,000 total views and listens. So the message is getting out there. And as you said, Craig, we want all the clubs to be a part of it. And this forum needs to be a forum for all clubs. So ZAK, Mark, thank you so much sincerely for coming on at short notice. And also we look forward to really fleshing this issue out on next week's episode of the Football Out West show.
Great work, guys. Well done.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you again for the opportunity very much.
No problem at all. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
As well. Thank you, Jen.
All the best.
Cheers.
Fantastic. Geez, we could really have gone on for an hour, and just judging by the number of viewers that are tuning in, it is, Steve, as we said, an issue that is not going to go away lightly. And I think the clubs are quite simple. All they want is some sort of action. They want a voice, and they want their voice to be heard.
Clarity, Tonch. They want clarity. Yeah, they want clarity on things. It's a very difficult situation for everybody. Specifically, Football Federation. Kimon was, very. We were very lucky to get him on last week. He took a bit of a pasting, but look, at the end of the day, we're all stakeholders of the Football Federation, and we need to know what's going on and make sure it's fair and reasonable for everybody. So numbers are fantastic tonight, guys, but. And some of the comments, unfortunately, we're not going to get through all of them tonight, Steve.
No, and look,
the comments are fantastic coming in support of ZAK and Mark and what they're doing. I think that speaks volumes. There's so many people commenting in with very positive comments about what they're doing is a good sign. I think that they're on the right track, the guys there.
Well, maybe
Now,
next week we get them back on, as we said, Tonch, and we open up the phone lines
said
and
that
we
they were
get
willing
some
to.
people. Yeah. So.
And we'll have a
Perfect.
lot more details. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of people asking about second place teams, third place teams, teams not just going for promotion, teams going, in the middle of the field. It's way too early to start talking about details, but next week's show is a different story. We'll probably have a lot more of a clear picture. And there may well be some form of response from Football Victoria as well. Gents, we're going to take a very, very quick break because we've got our guest on the line. He's been waiting for a while, and he's the chairman of the Association of Australian Football Clubs. I'm going to get it right this time. NICK GALATAS. He's definitely coming on now. Don't go away, folks. Big show still to come.
Looking for the best in authentic Maltese cuisine? Then you need to dine at Georgie's on Vista. Situated in the heart of Fraser Eyes, you can't go wrong when it comes to family dining. We have a menu for mum and dad, one for the kids, and one for seniors. Everyone's taken care of. Don't miss our specialty nights. Tuesday night is Parma night, where you get to choose from not one, but 5 different Parmas. Wednesday night, kids eat free with every paying adult meal. Thursday night is Members Night, where members get the chance to win some great prizes. And Friday night, join us for happy hour between 5:30pm to 7:30pm. Jim, Johnny, Jack, and their little brother Schooner are only $5 each. Looking to get an early start Friday afternoon for a punt? Our sports bar with TAB is open from 3pm Friday afternoons. To book your table, email info@georgiesonvista.com.au. Bring the family and come dine at Georgie's on Vista, 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Eyes, Plumpton.
Welcome back to the Football Out West show, and gents, geez, what a massive show we have had so far. But it's going to get only bigger and bigger with our next guest, and we're going to bring him straight on. And without further ado, a big welcome back to a man who has already been on this show once before, and we appreciate his gracing our presence yet again. NICK GALATAS, the chairman of the Association of Australian Football Clubs. Nick, welcome to the Football Out West show.
Good evening, boys and listeners. How are you?
Good evening,
Well,
Nick. Thanks for holding on. Thanks for holding on in the background there. Apologies for the delay, but obviously we wanted to get those guys on to have a chat about what's been going on today. And I know you've been part of that or conversations with ZAK this afternoon. Do you want to give us a bit of an insight into that before we get into the AAFC?
Yeah, look, Craig, this is something that, of course, AAFC has been involved with as well, and especially last year. I mean, we've had COVID now for 2 years, and we've had 2 seasons, not just one, which have been lost, unfortunately, especially for the kids, I've got to say, mostly. 2 years is a long time. It's a lot of football that hasn't been played. We've been a part of that. We've been a part of it nationally, with each state, of course, has dealt with it differently, both last year and this year. Some have been luckier than others. Victoria has probably copped it the worst, as we all know, lost 2 seasons. But for me, I sat and listened to the whole conversation there with Mark and ZAK, and 2 guys I know well, running very good clubs, listening to their frustration, speaking about the voice. And really, there's a slightly higher level issue here. And I didn't hear Kimon last week, so I won't speak to what Kimon said, but it's a governance issue we've got. And that's why even AAFC was formed. And the boys that were on tonight were speaking about, a voice and frustration. And the difficulty we've got is you've got a national Premier League, Premier Leagues as they call it. It's rolled out nationally according to sort of somewhat consistent rules, but not entirely. Football Australia is the ultimate, responsible party there, although they roll it out to what they call the competition administrators, which is the states. They do it their own way. Clubs, of course, aren't members of the states, which is why we were formed as AAFC. So clubs don't get a direct voice, which I think is the root of the problem. And that's not going to be solved with this issue or any individual issue. It's an overarching governance issue that has to be resolved, so that I think ultimately what we need is clubs being members of their federation, so they've got a direct say. And then beyond that, it's not so simple either, because of course NPL, be it Division 1 of it or Division 2 of it or whatever it might be, has a different interest to what community football at the lower level might have. Your park football, your people playing once a week, clubs with only one team or two teams, maybe just juniors, maybe just seniors, maybe, older, younger, doesn't matter, boys, girls, who knows? So we've got to structure the game a bit differently. It's gotten huge. I mean, Football Victoria's got a massive job. I don't envy it. They run everything from, the blind football, futsal, boys, girls, community programs, you name it, they run it. So it's very hard when you've got a particular interest issue like this one. And let's be fair, to Football Victoria here, they suffered financially last year as a result of COVID, like we all did. I think they've lost staff, they've lost resources. So to try and then run this year with that limited resource and with the particular challenges, who would have thought, who would have predicted? But so it's a huge issue. It's a big problem. And of course, the overarching other issue is blockage that we've got in the game. So that, let's not, avoid some of the issues here. One is that an NPL2 team has a different interest to an NPL1 team. So, you get promotion, they come up, you make the NPL1 season longer, perhaps there's more teams, there are financial issues, and that, of course, might be solved if there was promotion up the other way to a second division and ultimately to the A-League, and we don't have that yet. And I see from the comments what a critical issue promotion is and relegation, that we've talked about it forever and a day, and ultimately, links up with our discussion, National Second Division, and what we're about is unblocking this game. That's what it comes down to, better governance and unblocking the game. So we've got this silo at the top, A-League. Then below that, we've got, where do the NPL1 teams go at the end of each year? They win their league, they go nowhere. NPL2, get promoted. NPL3, get promoted. NPL1, stuck. So we've got this unnatural, artificial blockage in the game that filters all the way down and causes problems at times like this. So we want to solve those problems. That's what we've been about, not just the National Second Division. We want to try and get in there at become a member, make the clubs members of their federations, so that these types of expression of passion and interest, as Zach and Mark did today, can be directly done regularly, structurally, in an organised manner, not just in response to an issue as it arises, so that the game can finally work in unison, as opposed to someone trying to do it without that feedback. And I've got to say, in fairness to Football Victoria, they have been working at feedback. They have been in touch with clubs. Certainly with AAFC, they've worked very well. I think they've worked well with clubs generally, not perfectly. We can all complain, but that's not what we're about. We all do our best. So, and I think it's one of the better member feds when it comes to that. So but COVID's a challenge. COVID's a huge challenge. But ultimately, what it shows is, as the boys said before, a voice, membership. Let's get in there. Let's be part of the federation. Let's have an ongoing relationship between clubs and federations, so that we anticipate these issues rather than react to them. And I know this is the hardest. We're not going to get COVID all the time, but it should be a lesson to us. So we get to the point where we're able to anticipate, because clubs can provide that feedback in advance, as opposed to problem, let's go and talk, let's consult. That's a difference between that, consulting later, versus having that ongoing feedback. And it's a challenge that I think with some goodwill, and I think there is goodwill, will be solved. The problem started a long time ago when the new constitutions came in 06, 07, I think it was, at Fed level, and clubs were no longer members of the federation. So we can't undo these things on overnight. It takes time. It's frustrating. I certainly have experienced it both as a club administrator at South Melbourne and subsequently as AAFC chair, and I've seen it firsthand. And it's a frustrating exercise for clubs, because they just want to play football in the end. And they just want to, as Mark said, I think, win the competition, be champion. That's what it's about. Yeah. So it's not as easy as that sometimes when a thing gets huge, becomes a behemoth, and then we have an overlay of a COVID, a structural problem. How do you solve it? Limited resources, etc. So we've got to have a structure in place. And that's what we're really, ultimately, even this NSD discussion we're having now, it's about having a structure in place off-field and on-field, which is what we're working on. That's ultimately the position.
Yeah, from the grassroots community level, which you've been talking about for most of the show, let's now turn our attention to the other end, the professional sphere.
Yep.
And that's precisely what we brought you on the show, the National Second Division. And the last time we had you on the show, you introduced the organisation, your role, what was happening behind the scenes. A lot has happened, let's face it, since then. And most recently, late August, there was a meeting between Football Federation Australia and the AAFC and some of the member clubs. Bring us up to speed with where we are with regards to that, because there is a lot of exciting things happening behind the scenes.
That's right, Tonchi, there is. And one of the things that I've been doing, and I think with you guys too, and on every program that I've been on about the second division, is to try and, I suppose, manage expectations a little bit, because once you introduce a discussion like this, as we have, and as Football Australia now has, and as they've really, I think, embraced it, and I won't have said that 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I'm saying that now. I'm saying that with some confidence, which, as I say, is new. So when that's embraced, and I think media people, football people like you guys, our listeners, see it and start to think it's real, as opposed to, it's more pie in the sky, let's forget about that, let's talk about tomorrow's match and let's not worry about it. But when it's real, then suddenly we go from, or I've seen, disbelief and negativity to huge optimism overnight and expectation. And sometimes we get ahead of it, we're sort of behind ourselves and ahead of ourselves too quickly. So it's going to take time, and it's very, very difficult exercise to introduce in this environment where we have not had a national second division to have one. So in fairness, it's a challenge. In fairness, we need to bring everybody along on the same page and get everyone behind it. So that's been some of the background work, and it's been bringing the clubs along, stress testing their confidence, their capability, their ability, and then having that discussion with Football Australia. So we had the meeting. Clubs came on board, I think, answered some questions for Football Australia. I think giving them some satisfaction and some confidence that these clubs are able to, capable, willing, and available to step up to fill that role that will be asked of them. So that was key and critical. There was an exchange of views on some issues. There's been some questions put to the clubs. Of course, that was a meeting that went for a few hours, and you can't answer everything there and then. So we've taken some questions away. We're working on them now. We propose to provide the information that Football Australia has asked us for in the next couple of weeks in total. And then I think we just progress it from there. So once that information is with Football Australia, I think they can then take their next steps, which they're doing anyway. We propose to finalise that report we put out in January, which will be really our contribution to Football Australia's thinking and Football Australia's approach. So the aim there is to say, here is what our clubs can do. Here is what they're able, what their position is now, who they are, what they can be. And that really ought best inform a governing body that's saying, okay, if I'm going to put a second division together, what are my tools? What are my resources? And that's what we're about. Here's what we offer. Here's what we provide. Here's what we can do. Here's what the clubs say they can best thrive in, the type of environment, what the competition will look like. This is why we say it's what they can best thrive in. And we hope that will inform Football Australia's thinking as to the final model. So that's what we're up to now. We're getting there. And really, I think we're making very, very strong strides now. It took a long time to sort of light that fire and slowly burn it to the position where it's now coming along. Chops are probably going on the grill, guys. So we're getting there.
Very good. Nick, after that meeting with Football Australia, they came out and announced a football calendar for the whole of the game, and the National Second Division got a reference in there with sort of a reserve date sort of put in there, or a reserve window for it. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that actually would mean? And is it something like a phased induction of the competition that way?
That's part. So Stephen, that's part of what's being discussed. So yes, in fact, the match calendar, the domestic match calendar came out just before that meeting, but yeah, it was about the same time. You're right. And that's another, I think, indication of the confidence we've got that Football Australia is serious. They're also putting out, I think, recently, some of the licensing proposals there. They're considering for the game, and again, provision being made for the National Second Division in that. So what was done there was a window between January and May, from memory, was referred to, with a notation though that will be extended either way, either go earlier or go later, according to whether or not the National Second Division will align with the A-League season or the current NPL season. In other words, is it going to be a summer type season kicking off October, November, in which case it start a bit before January, finish up May, or will we go, from January, February into, September, give or take. Don't quote me on the exact month, but you know what I'm getting at, like what sort of season we're talking about, depending on the number of clubs, the length, etc. So allowance is being made either way. And then on that, Stephen, that's what we're talking about right now. So whether or not, there'd be a phased approach or let's go into it straight away. I mean, we as AAFC see no reason for a phased approach. I think when you decide what's good and when you decide what's best, and we're advocating for that. We're explaining why we think a national competition is a way to go. Then there's no point phasing it. There's no point, sort of starting half-hearted. You're going into it. You're confident. You believe in yourself. You do it. So that's our approach. However, it's possible that Football Australia might favour a different approach. Don't know. That's for them. We're still in that discussion at the moment.
Great. Craig. I've got sort of two questions on clubs, and I know you're not going to be in a position to announce the clubs because it's not at that stage yet. But Are the clubs only going to be selected from NPL 1? Would be my first question. And secondly, obviously, given the situation, the conversation we had with Zach and Mark about promotion, one of the big elements that we've been made aware of over the last probably month was that NPL were really reluctant, or NPL clubs were really reluctant to finish the season or extend the season due to costs. Okay, and you brought that in your statement earlier on.
Yep.
Is that an issue? Because if they can't afford to pay the club for let's say the season went on for another 8 weeks and they had to pay another $80,000 out, let's just say, how can they possibly be a viable option for the B League? So, Craig,
it's exactly the opposite's the case, actually. So, look, I've had this discussion with a lot of people, including with James Johnson, CEO of Football Australia last year, when during the first lockdown, in particular, the Victorian NPL 1 clubs then were not wanting to continue, as you might remember from last year, and NPL 2 and 3 were wanting to continue, provided there was promotion. I mean, that was, and I understand that. There is that reward. So, firstly, just on the first part of your question as to who the clubs are, you're right. Look, it's not. I can't announce them, and it's not for me to announce anyway. But in relation to who they might be sourced from, I don't expect, and I can't say, I don't know what the model will look like, but I don't expect that when the initial clubs will be sought, probably through some sort of expression of interest campaign, I don't expect they'll be limited only to NPL 1. I would expect that it will be open. Certainly our position has been is that it can be open. Our partner group of clubs involves a number of clubs that are only, like Preston, they're on, and so's St George Cross. So we've got both of those as members. And I expect they'd be open to all sorts of clubs. So that's in answer to your first question. Of course, just to step on that a bit further, and that is that we're hoping to be linking to below immediately as well, so that clubs can immediately see the pathway and, win year 1 in the NPL and come up. So that's the other part of that. So we want to make sure that we've got that linking going immediately. But no, I don't think it'll be limited to NPL 1, but you can imagine, Craig, that the vast majority of strong clubs are in NPL 1, and there's a reason for that. I think Preston's actually a great example, and so is Mark's team, Sunshine, of perhaps teams that are not quite there, but, certainly Preston, I should say, in terms of being a team that's quite a bit below at the moment, but up and coming in a huge way. And there's a few of those clubs around the country in that position. But, like any structure, the top clubs generally at the top and other clubs are up and coming. So that's the first part. But in relation to, why clubs can't finish, it's not about can't. It's about, here we are struggling with COVID. We play for a reason. Why do we play outside professional leagues around the world? And I take you, Craig, you look at England and League One, right? Go anything below the championship, it's all about match day. I mean, it's all about that. You're not getting televised, really. I mean, no one's turning on their TV to watch League One games around the country. It's
I'm up at 1 o'clock in the morning, Nick.
Yeah. Fair enough. Some of us have been crazy. My team Leeds was down there for a while. Don't worry about it. Right? I'll be up tonight. Yes, but you know what I'm getting at. If without match day, you're not surviving at that level, and that's a high level. That's League One in England, right? Let alone NPL in Victoria. So it's a question of saying, well, look, we put on a show for our supporters. That's what it's about. We're not going to make any income. We're going to have expenses. Even if the players play for nothing, then you get to the point, well, why are we going around anyway? What's the purpose of actually playing when no one's watching it? It's not being televised. So we're watching we finished the A-League season last season because there was a TV audience for it and a broadcast deal to see through. Made sense. I do it too. Logical. But that's not the position in competitions below. And in fact, the one competition that had nothing to play for in that sense last year was NPL 1, because NPL 2 could get promoted, or NPL 3, they could get promoted. NPL 1 can't. Where do you go? No, that's what I meant about the blockage. So that's the first point. It's not a question of, and the other, I think, key issue, Craig, is it's the flip side of the coin to what you mentioned, and that is that the whole point of unlocking the potential of these teams in NPL 1 is so they're not in a financially constrained position where they can't afford to finish leagues. See, the opposite's the case. If you had a national second division, let's assume it's Melbourne Knights that are in it, that are playing it. Take one Melbourne example, just a Melbourne example. Take Melbourne Knights. The Melbourne Knights that will be participating in a functioning national second division is not the Melbourne Knights that you see today. If that was the Melbourne Knights that you saw today, then the national second division has failed already. Right? The whole idea of the National Second Division is it's a platform that enables our Melbourne Knights to participate at a far higher level than it does now. Right? You'd have you'd have better governance. Sorry, I don't know if I've lost you.
No, you're okay. You're
yeah, sorry, you've scared me with my own face. You scared me with my face. So, so that, and I think, and the President Pave Yusuf said it very well at a function I attended earlier this year when we had football between South Melbourne and Melbourne Knights at their game, at their ground. We said they're operating at about 20% of capacity. That's because, not because of anything they're not doing, but because the platform, the competition in which they participate, the NPL, doesn't enable them to move to fulfill their potential and to grow into the club they can be. So if we had a national second division, that's why we're driving this. We're saying that number of clubs around the country, firstly the 12 or the 14 or the 16 initial participants would grow automatically. The ones below would also grow. So let's say Preston's not in year 1. Well, the fact that they could be in year 2 or 3 will bolster and enable their growth and clubs around the country. So then you've got better governance. You've got better, you've got the committee, the board, the sponsors, the support. All of that grows. Players, of course. So it's not, again, using the Melbourne Knights example, they're not going to go in with their squad that they had this year, playing in NPL, playing in the second division, because then you haven't improved the standard. The idea is that they're a different division, players step up, they've got a better squad than they've got now. So everything improves. That's what we've put in our report. So when you had me on earlier in the year that we'd released, so that we improve every element of the game. That's the key. So that we're not faced with this question of, you guys can't finish an NPL season, because firstly, those teams are far stronger financially. That's why they're playing there. That's why they're up there. And they've grown and they've got far more income and revenues, etc. And secondly, there's a reason they're playing there. They're not. So if we had it now, and you're talking about NPL 1 next year, and we had a second division, they'd be in the same boat as Zach's team and Mark's team. They'd be all wanting to push up, right? Yeah. So we've got that blockage which we need to get rid of. And I get frustrated, and you might hear it in my voice, because we're representing a position and we're dealing with these problems that are not of our making. We're the clubs. Yeah. We didn't create these structures. We didn't create these divisions. We didn't create these silos, but we've got to play in them. So, and we've got a bunch of clubs that are saying, let us be better. That's what we're doing. Let us be better.
And I guess that's where the ambition element comes into it. When you've got something to strive, the clubs are going to be a lot more ambitious. They're going to invest not just in their squads, but their infrastructure, their stadia, etc., their membership drive, etc., sponsors, and all of that kind of stuff. Nick, at the end of the day, who's going to make the decision as to the composition of the league? Is it the AAFC? Is it a conglomerate of clubs or whatever they want to be a part of it? Is it the Football Australia, or how is this going to be done? Because ultimately,
the decision maker, Tonchi, is Football Australia. I mean, they're our governing body. Yep. We don't govern the game; they govern the game. Now, having said that, of course, how they make the decision, obviously, they will consult. They will do their work. They're doing their work, and I've said from day one, and I've sort of emphasised this, and perhaps at one point we might have been a bit misunderstood or mistaken by a number of media organisations. I remember having this conversation with Lucy Zelic on the World Game about our role and are we introducing it. And I think because we stepped into the breach and brought this to light, we got, in a sense, elevated beyond what we were, and that is that we're not the governing body, right? Football Australia is the governing body. We don't seek to usurp their role, nor could we, nor would we. But what we do say is that, and what we anticipate is that a governing body like Football Australia, as I was saying earlier, when looking at what they can do, when looking at the model, we look at what's available to them. We look at the resource available, and that's us. So clearly, we are looking to inform that model in a very, very substantial way. We're looking to say to Football Australia, you're not doing this in a vacuum. You're not setting up a competition in the middle of nowhere. This is a second-tier competition. It's not even going for the highest you can achieve. This is going to sit somewhere between NPL and national. So what we're saying is, here is where the clubs are. This is what they can do. So we anticipate and expect that will be listened to by Football Australia, and that will be a very significant contributor to their thinking. Now, obviously, if what's proposed in the end is something the clubs can't do, they probably won't do it. But we don't think that's going to happen. We think that Football Australia, in coming to a model, will have had very significant, regard to us and the clubs, and that's what we're discussing at the moment. That's why we're informing that decision.
I guess that's one of those details. Sorry, Steve, to cut you off. Back to that talk about who would determine the teams. But I mean, we've got the Australian Professionals League at the moment. They run the A League. It's standalone now. So we've got Football Australia. Obviously, they do govern the sport and what you're not. But at the moment, it's independent of the A League, and then obviously we've got the NPLs that come under the jurisdiction of the various state bodies. So has all of these little small permutations, combinations, what you're not, have that been discussed at the moment, or is that something that still has to come a bit later on?
No, look, all of it's being discussed, Tonchi. This is what happens when you unlock. It's almost a Pandora's box. And once you start talking about a national second division, what you do is that in there's four of us speaking here, and we all come from different backgrounds, and we're all football people, and we've all got our own notion of what certain words mean. So when you say second division to one of us, automatically conjures up images of promotion, relegation, because really, when you think about it, logically, you can't be second if there's no first or third, or certainly if there's no first. You can't be second without a first. So people almost don't. So all of a sudden, everyone jumps into promotion, relegation. Everyone jumps into, all sorts of ideas of the game that they've grown up with, as we all have. So what we ultimately are saying is, look, let's not solve every problem in advance, because then we'll never start. Right? If you set out on the journey and you think about, if you want to drive around Australia and you think about all the possible pitfalls you might come across, what will happen if your car conks out somewhere here, and what will happen? You're never going to start. But if you do start, it's amazing what you work out as you go along. Right? Because you work things out as you go along. You find help that you didn't think you'd have. You get better at things. So what we're saying is, guys, look, let's not, before we start this competition, one, think it will solve every problem in the game. It won't, right? That's not its aim. I mean, it shouldn't have that burden on it. And two, let's not try and solve every little element of how it's going to link to the A League in some year in the future, how it's going to link below immediately, let's just fill this gap. Let's fill this gap. Everyone knows it's there. Yeah. So we've got a gap, and B, clubs that want to fill it. Where's the problem? That's what we're saying. Right. So, and if that's a good thing, and Football Australia said it is, and it's about not if, but how and when. So everyone wants to do it. there's a gap, there's a need, there's a demand, and there's a supply.
I hear you, Nick, but I guess we've waited this long that everyone wants it done right. And yeah, but I can hear that. I get that. Steve, sorry, I cut you off, my friend, so it's over to you.
Oh, I think we were both on the same page a bit, Tonchi, because some of that question was related to what I was asking. I suppose the question is that on everyone's lips is that thing that you also just mentioned, Nick, about promotion from a second division to the A-League and relegation from the A-League down to the national second division. Do we know where we stand on that with regard to those clubs who've paid the A-League license fees and feel they're entitled to their spot for X amount of years and where that stands?
A number of assumptions there, Stephen, about what they feel. Look, I think that was the case years ago. I don't know what they feel now, but I'll say this. Right? It's ultimately a Football Australia issue again. They've reserved that sort of right to deal with that as part of the unbundling process with the A-League. That's the first thing. Secondly, I'm not going to speak to their business model necessarily, but I would have thought, let's assume one or two teams go down at some point. It's whether there's a number of elements of that. One is where do they go down to, right? And secondly, what are the benefits overall to their competition? So, you might lose, one or two clubs might lose a bit if they drop out, and with the opportunity to come back up, of course, so they don't lose their rights completely. But if their competition grows by, let's say 50%, I'm just throwing up a number for the sake of the conversation, by reason of having promotion and relegation, and then two of those clubs who've also grown as part with that 50% as well in the process have come down and then can come up again, that's not necessarily a bad thing or a problem. Now, and I'm not saying I don't know how they feel or think about that, but there's a preliminary question to all of this, and that is where they're going to get relegated to. Now, one of the reasons I haven't wanted to speak about promotion and relegation is that it's premature. Right? Obviously, if there's a successful second division, it will speak to and call for promotion and relegation in due course, because there'll be a clamour for it, a demand for it. That's a football thing, right? We all know that. But there's no point talking about it now, because we don't know what the second division will look like. Let's assume it fails or it's hopeless, right? I don't think it will be, but it might be. So obviously no A-League team will want to get relegated into like they don't want to get relegated into the NPL, because they'll die in the NPL. They know it, right? They're not geared for it. They weren't there. So what we want to do is say, look, let's get it up and going. Let's build it. Let's show what it can be. And then the A-League will be less frightened of dropping into a viable national second division, because A, it's not the end. It's not the end. They can come back up. And B, itself might be very decently financial. I mean, I don't know that, the Central Coast Mariners, just to pick a club out of the blue, because they've been one of the less performing, less financial clubs. No secret among some of the clubs. If they were to drop into a strong, viable national second division where they can effectively regenerate, catch their breath, so to speak, instead of trying to keep up with the top big city A-League teams, and like happens around the world with regional teams, come again. And go again, maybe that's good. If they're, they won some games last year, but if you're a supporter of a team that's losing week in, week out, and you're at the bottom, you might enjoy winning a bit. You might enjoy dropping down and having, a really good run in a division below, celebrating 15, 16 wins in a season rather than 4, and going up. Now, I think that is possible only, I know it's possible only, if you've got a viable national second division. If you don't, that's pie in the sky. Will never happen. Yeah. So that's what we want to. Let's build this first, and then we can have this other discussion, which we won't have to have. It'll organically happen.
Yeah. Huh? There is some questions there around promotion and relegation. What happens to the under 21s? Do they go into, let's just say, Melbourne Knights, because that was what we were talking about. Melbourne Knights finished bottom of the league, of the B League. They get relegated back into NPL. What happens to the under 20s that are put into the NPL? There's a lot of discussions around that.
Yes, there are.
And there was another question I had, and it's on the top of my tongue. We've talked for forever and a day on this program, Nick, about player development, giving youngsters an opportunity to showcase their talent on the national stage. It's starting to happen within the A-League. We saw a lot more players coming through the system last year. We saw the Ollie Roos at the Olympics recently. what would be the situation in terms of the national second division in terms of player age? Will there be a restriction on players over the age, or will it be that you've got to have X amount of under 23s in your squad? Because ultimately, from myself as a coach and a developmental coach, I want to see as many young players playing at the highest level they can. Now, if it's going to be about the richest clubs get into the B League, and don't worry about the youngsters, then that defeats the whole object. Isn't the object of having the B League to give our youngsters an opportunity to showcase their talents?
No. I'm being facetious a bit. Of course that will happen, and of course that's a major thing. But no, actually no. And I say this no. Why? I'll come back to that, Craig, in a step. The object for me and for our clubs is to have more strong clubs. What we're missing in this country at the moment, and we have this discussion before I get to the players, which is why the players are being developed, is we're missing lots of strong clubs. And if you look around the world, pick any team. You can pick them in random. You put your hand in a bucket and have all the countries in there, the stronger football nations. And what you'll find when you pick out a name of a country, whichever one it is, huge, middling, small, provided it's a football country, it has lots of clubs in that country at every level that corresponds with its football environment in that country. What we've got here is a number of A-League teams, and then below that, as I said, a huge gap, and then other teams, smaller teams. We don't have this organic nature of clubs where players can find their level, right? So we're missing that in a huge way. So if you're an NPL player and you're showing a bit of promise and you're 18, 19, and you don't then immediately get picked up by an A-League team or go overseas, then what happens to you, right? And if you're playing at an NPL team and you know that your team can't get promoted into the A-League, is that we don't have that, then what happens to you? Right, you sort of, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen now for 15 years. Players get lost in that system, right? So what we hope to see, Craig, is with the second division, the dragging along of some of these players who are coming through at different rates. They don't all make it into the A-League immediately or go overseas or whatever it is. Players develop later, as we see. And if they're playing at a higher level, that's what will happen. You'll have more players retained in the game, continue to develop. And the other element of this, and you spoke about, will we have age groups and the like? Well, I personally don't favour rules of that type that prescribe what teams look like. It's not off the table, though, because I'm not going to make the decision, and others are considering all these issues, and some clubs have different views to me. But by and large, we as AFC don't favour and haven't said we favour a rule like that. Because what will happen, and I agree with you that we don't want to see a national second division with some sort of a journeyman culture of clubs going around with 32-year-olds.
What the A-League is at the moment, Nick, which is exactly what the A-League is.
Yeah, exactly. But what there's a difference, and I'll come to. And you mentioned all the young guys that came through, and you saw what happened, Craig. Why did it happen? Accidentally, of course, and that is that the money fell away. The money fell out of the A-League last year, so more young players got a chance. The foreigners weren't here, and they got a chance at that level. And what's happened with the A-League, I'm not going to diagnose all its problems here now, but what's happened with the A-League is they set a salary cap, set a level, whereby if you're a coach, Craig, of one of the A-League teams, you don't have the incentive or the motivation, and certainly the risk profile available to you to pick a young guy, because you've got more money available than the young guy actually commands. So what you've got in Australia is a mismatch economically. So if you had a salary cap of $3.5 million 3 years ago, you could fuel that team with players that are beyond what a young guy, except for the exceptional, let's say, can command. So if you had a couple of $100,000 left on your bottom end of your salary cap for your third centre back or fourth centre back, you're not going to go to the NPL to pick the 19-year-old. You're going to go to Austria and pick some bloke who's played a bit of Europa League when he was 28 and now he's wandering around the league at 32 somewhere. Bring him back because he's better right today as opposed to in 2 years.
But aren't we stifling the opportunity for kids to develop?
No, we are, Craig. We are. And that's my point, that because we had this financial environment that speaks to that, then we do. Because as a coach, you'll pick the best player you can with the money that you've got available. You want to win, right? So what we are about in the national second division is that what we're saying is, we start off semi-pro, we build it. So what we're saying is that if you think about it, let's assume you've got a 12, 14, 16 team league, right? National second division. So, of course, you haven't got the best players. They're playing in the A-League or they've gone overseas. You've got the next state and the developing players. Who's going to – a lot of these guys, a lot of the 28-year-olds now playing NPL in Victoria, 30-year-olds, they've got jobs. A lot of them have got jobs. You know, they're tradies, they're professionals, they've got other work. So making more money out of those jobs than they're making in the NPL, of course, and certainly initially they'll be making in the second division. So you're not going to have a lot of those players who are going to be wandering around the country playing every second week elsewhere, committing themselves to the sort of training regimes we want for the, the levels of training and development we want for the second division to raise the standard. So we say that the vast majority of players, not all, and we don't want it to be all, the majority of players will be the younger brigade because they're the ones that will go around playing for the sorts of money that will be on offer. You know, if you're not offering $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 salaries to these players, so to attract that journeyman player, you're offering the sort of level of money which will attract the younger player. And the other thing, Craig, just on young players, if you've got 12 teams at 20 players a team, 240 players, that's our biggest worry is not if we've got 50 or 60 or 70 older blokes. Once we've dealt with the younger guys in the A-League and the next 100, 150 coming through in Australia, we've accommodated most of our young blokes. If we're going below the first 150 players or 200, well, we're not worrying about the best, are we? So I don't think that's an issue. I think what you'll see is that the vast majority of teams are focused. Certainly our members have already said so directly. They've told, that's what our report says. They're focused on developing young players. They're focused on and expecting that the vast majority of their squads will be comprised of younger up-and-coming players. That's just organically the case because that's what the financial model will look like. You won't attract the bloke who's 30, wants to go around and have a kick because it's not in his interest. Probably still be in the NPL. So that's what we're
don't
about.
want him. But you don't want him.
Yeah.
You want a couple. You want a couple. Sorry, you want a couple because that's part of development. I mean, sorry, and this is Craig, I mean, footballer, no, sorry to interrupt there, but you want a couple because you don't want a dressing room full of young kids either. They develop.
Would there be an advantage to have a squad of 16 players, but out of those 16 players, 6 of them have to be in your squad, have to be under the age of 23, and you have to have 5 playing on the park. Now, for me as a coach, I would go and watch Melbourne Knights if they've got a load of youngsters playing week in, week out at that level of football, because for me, it's about their development and how they're going to improve. That's my
a supporter. And what you'll find, Craig, is that most supporters and the whole structure of the model for which we're contending is geared to that, so that there'll be no incentive, there'll be no reason for any club to not do that. In fact, there'll be every reason for it to do that, particularly also because we've got a new transfer system being introduced in Australia, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the other motivation. So when you put it all together and you look at the way the competition is to be structured, everything speaks to that. So whether you need a rule, look, we're not fixed one way or the other, like we're not wedded to it for or against, but you'll find that it will be irrelevant because, it'll be a rule that says, do something that you want to do anyway. So, that's exactly what we want to do, what you said, Craig, and that is develop young players. And it's a critical part of what the clubs want to do.
And it gets back to that ambition that we talked about, Nick. You get a young player playing in a shop window such as a national second division. They're going to be striving to get an A-League contract. And if that fails, they're going to be striving to go overseas. And it's all about raising the profile of that level of football, which is sadly at the moment missing. I guess one thing that I would love to see is a 3 strikes and you're out policy implemented. By that, I mean, if a player gets transferred from one club to another club, that's it. We don't want the recycling that's happening in the A-League.
I'd love to see Matt Simon playing in these D League.
You would not. You would.
No, I wouldn't like to see him in bloody.
What's the record, guys? Do you guys know what's the current record? I mean, have we got 7 or 8? Any bloke play for about 8 of them so far?
Who got the most? Was it Isaka Cernak got a lot, I think, from memory.
Was it? I don't know. Liam Reddy.
But you're right. And what it does, what it does also, in support of your point, guys, in support of your observation, it actually, supporters don't like it. You lose interest. I mean, you're going to go and watch a bloke that's playing 6 other clubs?
Yep. That's why I'm lost to the A-League. I've totally gone off it because of that recycling policy, officially or unofficially. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. We would love to have you back. 3 strikes and you're out does not apply to you, mate, by the way. We'd love to have you back on for a third time. And we could definitely talk a lot about this. This is another issue that we certainly hope is not going to get away. So we'd love to hear in a few months' time all the latest information regarding the National Second Division. But once again, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for all the work behind the scenes, because finally we've been talking about this since the start of COVID. Now is the time to start strategizing, start talking about what needs to be done, and thankfully, we are starting to see some action happening.
Thank you, guys, and for your interest and ongoing support. Talk soon. See ya.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks again.
Thanks, Nick.
Good on you. That's Nick Galatas, the chairman of the Association of Australian Football Clubs. Mate, what a great show we've had tonight, guys. Where are we at with will we get Dan or not? Have we got time to get him on Serie A? Or shall we just quickly go through some of the results, lads?
The first game of the night just kicked off, actually. Sampdoria is playing Inter into the 4th minute.
There you go. Well, we might run out of time. It was already we've almost gone 100 minutes. So let's quickly go through the results so far, Steve.
All right, so 3 games overnight took place, and the sentimental favourites, Venezia, they got a 2-1 win away at Empoli, so fantastic stuff for that very fashionable team on the rise again. Napoli, well, they ruined Juventus's weekend there, 2-1, come from behind win for them, and Napoli will prepare for some Europa League football this weekend too. This midweek. And Atalanta, one of the best teams to watch in Serie A, as we know, they went down 2-1 to Fiorentina at home. The match that's just kicked off, if you want to go and watch that one right after the show, Sampdoria versus the title holders Inter Milan, and then we've got fixtures also tonight at 11 o'clock: Cagliari, Genoa, Torino, Salaminaria, Spezia, Udinese, Milan, Lazio is a good one, Roma, Sassuolo, also a cracker, and Bologna, Verona. Some great games coming up in Italy over the next few days, and there's Napoli leading the league at the moment, 3 wins from 3 games, looking good.
Yeah, Lazio, Inter Milan, Roma, and Milan all have games in hand, so we could have a real bottleneck up at the top of the competition standings, and then we'll quickly look at the other end. Craig, there's the other end of the competition standings. Genoa, Salernitana, and Verona are struggling at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's still very, very early days. 2 games in, they've had the break. We'll see things starting to change. Juventus is the shock one down there, isn't it? Played 3, and obviously, as Steve said, got beat again last night. They obviously missing Ronaldo, clearly. Very early days, but I'm sure it'll all change very soon.
I know Santino Mamone told us off air not to talk about Juve tonight because he is shattered with the way the black and whites have been opening the season.
He'd be double shattered because not only are Juventus losing, his favourite player Ronaldo's gone to Manchester United, and not only that, he scored 2. I had to ring him this morning to see if he was okay.
That is what is happening in Serie A, and we'll quickly go look at the some of the fixtures for match day 4 next week. Steve, the pick of the games. What do you think?
Let's see. What have we got here? Is there any? Oh, Juve Milan. I like that fixture. That's on next Monday morning at 4:45. Not too bad at all. Have you got a favourite there, or will you go with that one?
Oh, I think that's the big one. Even though Juventus are struggling at the moment, nonetheless. Doesn't get any bigger than that, does it?
Pressure Juventus will be on
Milan. Yep. It's going to be a ding dong game next week. But before that, we've got a huge round of Serie A matches being played overnight. Gents, we've come to the end of the show. It has been an amazingly awesome show. We've had huge numbers tuning in, and dare I say, those that missed out tonight, they'll be tuning in to the podcasts where you can listen to the show, where all good podcasts are available, as well as the full replay of the shows. Craig, next week promises to be just as big a show. Obviously, we've got ZAK and Mark Sultana and ZAK Gruevski committing to come on board next week. We'll obviously have a lot more news, a lot more developments over the course of the next few days. It's going to be an interesting week coming up.
It certainly is. It's certainly watch this space, I suppose, Tonch, because we don't know what's going to happen. But there's a lot in the background, and we really appreciate both Zach, Mark, and Nick, of course, for coming on this evening. And thanks to the listeners, fantastic number of listeners coming through this evening. So
and the comments.
Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't get to all of them. Obviously, the nature of the show tonight was quite quick and flowing. So next week we'll have Zach, Mark, and we'll hopefully get the lines open next week, and you can come on and ask your questions to the guys, or even have a say on anything football.
And hopefully Dan Pagnacola as well. Poor bugger.
Poor old Dan.
We always seem to to run out of time every time. But
we need to put him on first up.
Yeah,
maybe we do. And he's just come on and shouted out there. The Rubery is making his debut for Salernitana tonight in the Serie A.
There you go.
So there's another player that's he's had about.
That's exciting. Yeah,
absolutely. Steve, myself, and yourself, we will be back tomorrow for the Geelong Region Soccer Show. We will be back with two big guests tomorrow. Now former president of Armstrong United, Mick Parker, talking about the club since its inception 5 years ago, and we've also got the outgoing head coach of the Galaxy United senior women's team, Rob Casher. He'll be joining us. So it should be a very good, interesting program tomorrow night at 7.
Look forward to it, mate. Less than 24 hours to go. We'll be back.
All good. Gents, good night, and look forward to a very interesting week ahead. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.